Imagine believing you understand women, only to have that belief ripped apart in the harshest place on earth. In 1850, Fyodor Dostoevsky, already a rising literary figure, was sentenced to 4 years of hard labor in the Siberian prison camps. He entered those frozen barracks as a man of ideals, but what he witnessed there reshaped his vision of love, loyalty, and the female heart forever. From the very first weeks, one scene seared itself into his mind. It came during the distribution of mail. For the prisoners, letters from the outside were lifelines, reminders that they still mattered to someone in the world beyond the prison walls. Dostoevsky expected the revolutionaries, the idealists, and the educated men to be showered with affectionate letters. After all, these were men who had risked their lives for great causes. Surely their women would stand by them in their suffering. But the opposite happened. The educated, principled men stood silent and empty-handed, their names uncalled, their hearts breaking under the weight of abandonment. No letters, no whispers of love, no memory of them carried through the cold air. Then came the turn of the criminals, the murderers, thieves, and rapists. And here, Dostoevsky witnessed a shocking inversion of everything he thought he knew. These men received letters by the handful, passionate words, filled with longing, desire, and unshakable devotion. Some envelopes held small tokens, even gifts of money. Others carried photographs of women who dreamed of binding their lives to the very men society had condemned as monsters. One murderer, who had beaten his wife to death with a hammer, received not scorn, but marriage proposals, 3 in a single day. Women wrote to him, not despite his brutality, but because of it. They longed to feel the raw danger he represented, to tame the beast, to test their own power against his savagery. His crime, instead of repelling them, became the dark magnet that drew them closer. Meanwhile, the political prisoners remained in silence. Their wives, who once spoke passionately of sacrifice, loyalty, and eternal love, had vanished. They had moved on into the arms of merchants, officials, or landowners who could provide them with security and comfort. Their loyalty had dissolved the moment their men lost status and power. For Dostoevsky, this realization was devastating. It was not virtue, sacrifice, or noble suffering that inspired women's devotion. It was strength. It was dominance. It was the ability to command life, even in its most destructive form. As the iron gates clanged shut each night, Dostoevsky understood that the real prison was not built of steel, but of knowledge, a knowledge too heavy to ignore, that beneath the mask of gentleness and loyalty, female nature was drawn irresistibly to power, even when that power took the form of violence. This revelation would haunt him for the rest of his life and echo through every novel he would later write. Why criminals attract, why idealists are abandoned. The more time Dostoevsky spent in prison, the clearer the pattern became. Day after day, the mail confirmed a truth no one wanted to admit. Women were not writing to the noble or the self-sacrificing. They were writing to the dangerous. Why? What made a murderer's blood-stained hands more alluring than the ink-stained hands of a revolutionary writer or a scholar? The answer struck Dostoevsky like a blade. Women were not drawn to morality. They were drawn to vitality, to the man who radiated strength, even if that strength was cruel and destructive. The murderer, by the very act of taking life, proved he possessed power. And power, whether righteous or brutal, was the signal women could not resist. It was not that women consciously admired evil. Most of them would have condemned such acts in public. But deep beneath words and appearances, attraction did not follow the same laws as reason or morality. A man's ability to dominate, to bend the world to his will, triggered something ancient in the female psyche. He could destroy, therefore he could also protect. He could take life, therefore he could also give life meaning. The idealists and political prisoners, on the other hand, radiated weakness in the eyes of women. Their sacrifices, their principles, their noble speeches, once inspiring in the drawing rooms of St. Petersburg, meant nothing behind prison walls. What mattered was not what they believed, but what they could command. And in Siberia, stripped of status, stripped of wealth, they commanded nothing. Their women saw it clearly. They may have once been moved by speeches of liberty and justice, but those ideals could not keep them warm at night, could not put food on the table, could not shield them from the judgment of society. And so, silently, many of them slipped away into the arms of men who still had power in the world. Merchants, officers, officials. Dostoevsky understood this betrayal not as a flaw of individual women, but as an unveiling of female nature itself. When the mask of social convention fell away, what remained was stark. Women gravitated toward power, wherever it appeared. This was not the romantic vision of womanhood Dostoevsky had once believed in. It was not the angelic figure sung about in poetry, nor the selfless companion dreamed of by idealists. Instead, it was something far more primal. Attraction was not a matter of promises or words. It was a matter of presence, of strength felt, of dominance perceived. The men who inspired devotion in prison were not the most moral. They were the most undeniable. They carried an aura that could not be ignored, even when wrapped in chains. And women from afar felt it, hungered for it, and bound themselves to it. The silence of the abandoned political prisoners, contrasted with the overflowing letters of the murderers, carved this truth deeper into Dostoevsky's soul. It was a revelation that made him both wiser and lonelier. For once you have seen the instincts behind the mask, you can never again mistake the mask for the truth. The nature of female loyalty and the hidden truths. As months turned into years, Dostoevsky could no longer deny what unfolded before him. He began to study it carefully, not as a lover, not as a betrayed man, but as an observer of the deepest layers of human nature. What he discovered about women's loyalty shook him to the core. To him, loyalty was not the absence of betrayal. Loyalty was measured by where a woman chose to anchor her devotion when circumstances changed. And here, behind prison walls, every mask was stripped away. A woman's promise, whispered in moments of comfort, meant very little when the man she loved could no longer provide or protect. The instant he was stripped of status, she was forced to make a choice: remain with him in weakness or align herself with strength elsewhere. For most, the decision was instinctive. They drifted toward strength. This is why the murderers, despite their crimes, continued to inspire passion. Their violence was proof of dominance. Even in chains, they radiated the possibility of power. Their very existence declared, "I am a force to be reckoned with." And to many women, that force was more compelling than virtue. Meanwhile, the idealists, those who had spoken of justice and liberty, gave off a different signal. They were powerless. They could not even defend themselves from the guards who barked orders at them. Their ideals, which once gave them an aura of strength, now appeared as helpless dreams. Women, sensing this shift, withdrew. Their letters stopped. Their loyalty dissolved. Dostoevsky realized something terrifying. Women were not consciously deceiving anyone. They were following an instinct older than civilization itself. It was not malice. It was survival. To tie oneself to a powerless man was to invite ruin. To tie oneself to a powerful man, even a brutal one, was to secure protection. He began to see female loyalty not as a fixed promise, but as a fluid current, always moving toward strength. When a man was strong, her loyalty seemed eternal. When he became weak, that loyalty melted away as if it had never existed. This truth revealed another. Women are not only drawn to power, they test it. Their loyalty itself becomes a kind of trial. Can the man remain unshaken when life strips him of everything? Can he hold his frame when society rejects him? If he collapses, she will abandon him. If he endures, she will stay, not because of words, but because his endurance proves he still carries strength. For Dostoevsky, this understanding was both a curse and a key. A curse, because it shattered the romantic illusions he once held. A key, because it explained patterns of attraction and betrayal that had confused men for centuries. Female loyalty, he concluded, is not rooted in morality. It is rooted in power. Women may speak of ideals, but their hearts respond to dominance, presence, and the ability to command life. That is the reality beneath the poetry, beneath the promises, beneath the veil of civilization. Dostoevsky's final realization and the lesson. By the time Dostoevsky's 4 years in Siberia came to an end, he was no longer the same man who had entered those gates. He left with shackles removed, but a heavier chain wrapped around his mind. The unshakable knowledge of what he had seen in women's nature. He understood now why so many men lived in confusion, why they never truly grasped the secret behind devotion and betrayal. They mistook words for reality. They believed vows, poems, and declarations of love were solid foundations. But in truth, those words were only reflections of a deeper instinct, an instinct that could shift in an instant. For women, loyalty was not a matter of morality, nor of memory. It was a matter of power. Their hearts aligned themselves not with who spoke the noblest ideals, but with who carried the greatest presence of strength. The criminals had it. Even stripped of freedom, they radiated force. The idealists did not. Once stripped of their stage, they had nothing left to offer, and so their women vanished. This realization would bleed into every story Dostoevsky wrote from that point forward. His novels became filled with women torn between men of power and men of virtue, women drawn irresistibly to dominance, even when it led to ruin. He no longer wrote of love as a pure, unshakable bond. He wrote of it as a battlefield between instinct and illusion, survival and sacrifice. And beneath his character's struggles, one truth whispered: attraction is not fair. It does not reward goodness. It does not honor sacrifice. It obeys only the primal law. Strength attracts, weakness repels. Yet Dostoevsky also saw something else. Within this harsh truth was a challenge to men. If a woman's loyalty flows toward strength, then the task of a man is not to complain about betrayal, but to cultivate strength, inner, unshakable strength that cannot be taken by circumstances. True dominance, he realized, was not about brutality or wealth alone. It was about presence, a calm authority that remained steady even when the world collapsed. The criminals, in their twisted way, possessed a crude form of it, but a man could refine it, purify it, embody it without violence. He could radiate an unshaken weight in his soul that drew loyalty not through fear, but through respect. This was the secret lesson Siberia had carved into him. Women may test, abandon, or betray when weakness shows. But when a man carries undeniable strength, their loyalty clings to him as if by instinct. Dostoevsky carried this dark knowledge out of the prison gates and into literature. He never forgot the silence of the abandoned, nor the passion of the condemned. And through his stories, he left behind a warning and a truth. If you wish for loyalty, do not seek it in words, do not seek it in vows. Seek it in the strength you embody. For in the end, a woman's heart, like all of nature, bows only to power.